Hello and welcome to another recording in my channel here. Those of you who are following me regularly know that I typically create videos about my conference talks and recordings from my teaching at the HTL Leonding. But today I have a very special video for you. Maybe you know that I am mentor and chairman at the Coding Club Linz, and in the Coding Club Linz, I got to know a very special young man a few years ago, Elvin, and he's a very talented young programmer. Elvin writes a lot of web code, and a few weeks ago, he created a very interesting component and asked me how he can make this component more well-known to the community. He is currently learning about TypeScript and Node.js and things like that, and he would love to have feedback. On the other hand, I think that his component is pretty great. It also taught me a lot about JSX because in my daily job, I typically do Angular development, and therefore I come very rarely in contact with JSX. So I thought it would be a good idea to invite Elvin, give him the possibility to talk a little bit about his component and teach us a lot of things about JSX, TSX, and so on. So let's bring Elvin up to the stage. Hi, Elvin.
Yeah.
Welcome to the video.
Hello.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, there's not much to say about me because I'm only 13 years old, but I started with web development. I don't know, about 5 years ago, I think. I created my first website for school, and it was a very simple static website made with HTML and CSS. But then I learned PHP to make dynamic websites, and then I discovered TypeScript, and that became my favorite programming language.
That sounds pretty interesting. Elvin, I would suggest that we start with you showing us a little bit about what this JSX is, because I guess many of the viewers are not so familiar with JSX. And I would also be very interested what your component really does. What was the problem that you were facing that your solution, that your component really solves? I'm looking forward to that, and the stage is yours. Let me bring your code up to the screen. I see you already have opened your component. So please give us a short introduction in JSX and tell us a little bit more about your component.
JSX is a very simple thing. It just looks like that. It looks like HTML and JavaScript. But as we see, we get an error here. Cannot find name React. Now we don't want to use React in this case. So we're going to open tsconfig.json. It's a file where you can specify options for a TypeScript compiler. For example, the output module, or where to put the compiled files and so on. And now we can specify custom functions to call when using JSX. I'm going to use jsxt.createElement here, but we still get an error. Oh, it takes a while to load in Visual Studio Code. Now we have it. Cannot find name JSXT. Of course, it doesn't exist here. And that is the thing my library provides. It's called template-jsx. And now we see we don't get an error anymore. So this code could already be executed, but it doesn't do anything. And that is the reason why we log the output from this expression and also render this tree that is generated here. JSXT.render is a function that takes some JSX elements and renders them to a string. You can see it here in the documentation. And when we look at that, we can now say TSC. We shouldn't get errors, right? With npm start, we see element. This is the tree that is generated by this expression. And we have the output like we expect it to be.
That's pretty awesome. So just to make that very clear, template.jsx is not an external library, but this is the library that you have created in order to be able to use JSX in your TypeScript project, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. I would be very interested in seeing the compiled JavaScript code. What does the TypeScript compiler create from this very simple example with H1 people?
So there we have some modular stuff. It's not interesting for us, but basically the JSX gets transpiled to simple function calls. And this is the function we saw over here, JSXT.create element. This just gets a name, the arguments, not arguments, sorry, the attributes. You can, for example, say title equals hello or something like that. And then the content of the element here, in this case, people. And the rest, yes.
I understand. I understand that. So that means a lot of my viewers, I think, always think of when they hear JSX only of React. But in fact, what you're using here is just a TypeScript feature, and TypeScript is transpiling this, let's say, embedded HTML into function calls, correct?
Right. So it's not really HTML, but it's syntactic sugar, nothing else, really.
Okay, I got that. But to be honest, just an H1 with people is probably not that interesting for many use cases. So I guess you can do more complex things than that with JSX, correct?
Yes, you can, for example, embed expressions here. Like I have an array of people, foo and bar, and then I have a content where I just have a div and a headline with people, and then I create a UL, and this is the syntax to embed JavaScript expressions. So you can just open this curly brace, put something inside there, and close it again. And in this case, I map over the people and put every person inside such a LE element.
Interesting. And that's that people.map and the P and so on, that's just TypeScript. So you also get TypeScript IntelliSense, I guess.
Yes, for example, when you say dot map, you see we get all the things we would get in normal JavaScript. P is in this case string, correct, because people is of type string array. And when we say LE, E is again of type string, a parameter of type string.
I see. And what happens if you run this code?
When I run this code, it looks like this. There we have the structure that gets generated, and this is the output in this case.
Mm-hmm. At that point of the demo, I ask myself, do you use React in the background? So how heavy is this library of yours? Do you have external dependencies on React and other things? I mean, we can go into more details later on, but just currently tell me, is this really just TypeScript, or do we need React, at least in the background?
No, we don't need React. It's just TypeScript. So my library has no dependencies. It's just normal TypeScript.
Ah, I see. So it's very lightweight. But I guess when you have built this library, you were not dreaming of just, I don't know, printing angle brackets on the screen. I guess you had something else in mind. For me, this looks very much like you want to build a plugin for some kind of web server, maybe?
Exactly. That was my first attempt. So what happened here? That was my first attempt to create this package. So I wanted to create my own website, and I thought, how would I do that? Why don't just use JSX? And that was the idea of how to create the library. And now we are going to import Express here. Express is just a framework for creating Node.js web servers. This is the app. And this is a special feature called create. It creates a function using these options. So in this case, indent false and use self-closing tags true. I think everyone should know that use self-closing tags is basically just this. It doesn't have any child elements. And this doesn't do anything now. So we need to implement a get handler like that. So, and then when we copy this out here, app listen 204 in this case. Oh, people.
I think you deleted the people array.
Yeah. That is right. So people. And when we run that now, we don't get any output. If we open up localhost 2004, we get exactly the thing we expect.
Ah, I see. But is that really okay? Because you're just rendering diff and h1 and ul. Aren't you missing the doc type and head and body and so on?
That's exactly the special feature from this render function. It always wraps everything that gets outputted into this doc type and HTML and so on. When we look at the source code here, we see there's doc type, HTML, head, body, and so on.
Okay, I get it. So essentially, you have now an Express server with some HTML and TypeScript mixed without having to include any external template language like handlebar or whatever. You're just using the JSX feature from TypeScript directly to build a dynamic website with Express. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So I just didn't want to use extra files because it should be a small website. And then I thought, just make it all in one single file.
Okay, I got it. I understand that. I know from the preparation of this video that you brought to us a more complex, more elaborate sample where we see in more details the power of your small little library. So I think we are going to generate some trees. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. So
Yeah,
I have
show us.
separated
Show us.
the thing here. When I run that, we open that again, we see open seed. Maybe you know RoboHash. It's a website where you can create a robot from a seed, and you just enter the seed here, and you get a unique robot. For example, in my case, this is my robot, or your robot. It's this.
Awesome. I use RoboHash pretty frequently whenever I have to do some mockups for user interfaces and I need avatars or whatever. So I know RoboHash. And what are you going to create based on hashes?
It's a seed generator. For example, if I enter my name here, you see it generates a tree.
Ah, okay.
And this tree is unique to my name. I can show you your tree. It looks like this. It's a bit smaller, but it looks great.
Yeah, no, nice. So how could your library, or how did your library support you when building this sample application?
So, wrong direction. So I just created a function here called paint. And inside this paint function that gets in seed is a recursive function called paint branch. And it gets called at the end here. And there you see this is open seed. And this is the route we saw before here, this route. It gets the seed and outputs the SVG. And in this function, we check if we are at the branches, let's say, and then we return an empty fragment. A fragment is a very special feature that just contains elements, or in this case, none. And it gets inserted at the place you put it in. For example, in this case, when we are not at the leaves of the tree, and we include this expression here, this is the recursive function call, we just take this line and insert it at this place. So you get a linear list of such lines.
I understand. So you don't have a single root element, but you have just sibling elements, one after the other. And that is what you call a fragment here in JSX.
Yeah, I can show you the code. It just looks like this. You have line after line, just a linear row of lines. Oh, almost 4,100 lines almost.
Oh, I get it. I get it. But so it's really a very nice integration from HTML and TypeScript to generate dynamic HTML. I get it. Okay, and I see that your JSX library just enables me in a very lightweight way to mix my Express code with the generation of HTML. Now, many of our viewers often use or build single page apps. And both of us, we were a few days ago, we were guests at Manfred Steyer's Angular meetup. And there we also presented this example. So my question to you would be, is there a possibility based on, for instance, Angular? Let's take Angular as an example, not limited to Angular, of course. You could use Vue or any other single page app framework too. Is there a possibility to somehow generate this code and bring it into a single page app? Can you show us this? I think you have prepared a sample like that, correct?
I've prepared an Angular sample. And you see, this is all the code in the Angular template. And you see here we have an input field. This takes the seed. So we don't have a URL parameter here. We just take it from an input field. And then we generate an SVG element with the inner HTML from the tree that we generate. And when we look at that, it's an observable in RxJS with some optimizations. And here we have the getTree method that just sends a request to the server. And when we start that thing, and wait, Angular is slow.
Angular is sometimes considered to be slow, but it does a lot in starting.
We open that, we see there's the input field. And when I enter my name, we see that's my tree, the exact same tree.
Okay, got it. Got it. So if you start the network tab, the developer tools with the network view, we would see that the Angular application now does network requests to the server to generate the tree, right?
Exactly. So when we enter something here,
yes.
Yeah,
here it is.
Now it's your name.
Yeah, okay, I got that. Can you quickly go back to the TypeScript code in Angular? You were pretty fast there, and I guess that some of our viewers are not that familiar with Angular. Maybe they come from a different programming language. Can you scroll up a little bit? I just wanted to point out what you did here. You have this form control in line 16 that enables the user to type in some letters, maybe the name of the user. And then please take a look at line 20. Here you are using the value changes property of this form control. And that is essentially an RxJS observable, which is then transformed with a pipe using your getTree method, which we see in line 30, to make server requests to get the server-side generated code generated with your library into our application. I see that in line 32, you're using the DOM sanitizer. Elvin, can you tell us a little bit more why you added this DOM sanitizer in this place and why it is important?
Yeah, the DOM sanitizer is a class that helps you to secure your HTML that you inject, in this case, in a HTML. And Angular would tell us, error, don't do that, when we don't say bypass security trust HTML. There are some methods, I don't know how they're called, like sanitize or something, that remove script tags and such things. But in this case, we know we can just trust the thing that comes from the server. And the output is safe HTML. So we need the safe HTML to tell Angular that this is safe.
Okay, I got it. So people should be very careful when they load stuff from the server and directly put it into the inner HTML, because that would maybe open some security issues if you are not careful. But as you said, in this case, we can trust the server because we know the server, we have written the server. So it is fine, especially also because we are just in a demo here. Elvin, I got it. But would it be possible to take your great component and this whole notion of JSX and not just run it on the server, but also run it on the client inside of our Angular app? Again, just taking Angular as an example.
Yeah, that's a fun thing. I'm just going to try that now. When we create a file here called paint.tsx, imports here, and now we can just copy out this function from here, like that. Just copying it and pasting it here. Export.
So you didn't have
As
to
you can
change
see,
anything. It's the same code as we
yeah,
had it
exactly.
before.
The same code. And now when we import it up here, like that, and this is now a thing when we take the code to execute all this on the client. Oh, wait. It's a bit weird here. So,
Small typo. Yeah.
yeah. This is the code to execute it on a client. We have the same thing, bypass security trust HTML, and we now call the same function jsxd.render by using paint with the seed we get in. Now, why is there an error? This error is because switch map accepts an observable as the return type of this getStreet. It's very simple, just change that to map. Now there's no error anymore. And when we open this up again, we see it still works exactly the same, except that we don't send any requests.
So your library is
That's
now caring for generating the HTML on the client side directly inside the Angular application, but viewers should not get that wrong. That is not an integration of React and Angular. That is just using the JSX technology on the client side with your library to generate some HTML.
Yeah, so it looks weird because the React icon is inside an Angular project, but it hasn't to do anything with React, as we learned.
Okay. Maybe to prove, maybe you can open the package JSON from the Angular application, and we should see on the one hand side your library as a dependency, and we should really, just to prove the point, see that there is no dependency to React or whatever.
Yeah, that's not really a proof because I could just have deleted that, but there's no React in the node modules.
Yeah, okay. People can trust us, and
Yeah.
by the way, the whole example is online too. Let me quickly show here the banner where people can find this example on GitHub if they want to play with it. So yeah, we believe you, and I hope the viewers believe us too. But I wanted to see people act your library working here in the client side Angular. So maybe to close, what would be interesting for me and also for the viewers, is your goal to replace, I don't know, the templating engine or the template compiler of Angular? Or where do you see the sweet spot of your library? In which direction would you like to develop this library to?
So my library is definitely not a replacement for any Angular stuff. It's made for server-side use, as we see here. It's an Express server in this case. And the thing that we integrated it in the Angular project on the client side is it's just for fun. So it's nothing.
Just for fun, just to prove. I see. Okay, so just for fun and to prove that your library also works on the client side. I guess maybe if people just develop a very simple website and they don't have any framework at all, plain vanilla JS application, they could use your library too, couldn't they?
Yeah, they need transpilers because Node.js doesn't understand this syntax. So either TypeScript or Babel or something like that.
Yeah, of course, they need a transpiler. But you now said something interesting. You mentioned Babel. Does that mean that your library does not just work with TypeScript, but also with JavaScript and Babel?
Yes, exactly. TypeScript is not JSX, so it's not from TypeScript. It was originally invented by React at Facebook. They created their own transpiler, but later there was came Babel, and then they had their JSX transpiler, and you can just use it in normal JavaScript.
Interesting. That brings me to my last question to you, Elvin. First, let me congratulate you to your work. It's really impressive what you have done. You are rather young for a developer, but this is an extraordinary achievement for a young coder. So congratulations to that. And if any of the viewers would like to learn more about your component, where can they find it? How can they get in touch with you? How can they maybe give feedback? I know that you are looking for feedback. How can they maybe even send you pull requests?
So as I showed before, this is the NPM page. There's a README. You can read that there are many special features like conditional elements where the thing inside there is only rendered when this condition is met. Watch this video, by the way. And then there were switch and case and so on. Yeah. And this is the GitHub. You can open an issue or send me a pull request. I really welcome any contributions to my package.
Very interesting, very interesting. Thank you very much for being my guest today. Thank you very much for telling us a lot of things, a lot of interesting things about JSX, TSX, about how TypeScript and the Babel transpiler work with this embedded HTML, and for introducing you to your library. I will definitely give it a try. In fact, I have, of course, already tried it, and it was pretty impressive. I could reach very interesting goals in a short amount of time. So again, thank you very much for being here. And I heard that you are also available on Twitter. Let me quickly show your Twitter account. So if people want to give you feedback or ask questions, you can also reach Elvin here under that Twitter handle. And with that,
this is my Twitter account.
Awesome. Thank you very much. With that, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this demo. And yeah, have a nice day and goodbye to all the viewers.